we supposed to set boundaries with people that ignore our boundaries? What are boundaries supposed to accomplish? What can we expect when we learn how to set boundaries? And can learning how to set boundaries make a narcissistic relationship more tolerable? In this video, I'm going to go into detail about what boundaries are supposed to accomplish, what they're for, and how narcissists can really mess up our ability to even understand boundaries, let alone learn how to set them in a healthy way. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. So first of all, what are boundaries exactly? I know it took me a long time to really understand this concept. I don't know if it's really all that complicated, but maybe just from where I was coming from, it was something I just couldn't wrap my mind around. One of the biggest misconceptions that I had for a long time was that you only need boundaries when you are with somebody that's trying to take advantage of you. Boundaries are there to protect you from people that are trying to hurt you or trying to disrespect you. When you're with somebody that is respectful of you, then you don't need boundaries. This could not be further from the truth. This is just a result of me completely not knowing what boundaries are and having boundaries just be like this foreign concept to me that I had to learn my way through. Now, narcissists really mess up our perception of boundaries and our ability to set boundaries because they feel like boundaries are an attack on them or some sort of robbery, like we're taking away what's rightfully theirs by setting a boundary. Narcissists really cannot respect people's autonomy. They really can't even understand your autonomy. So a boundary to them is like this pointless, selfish thing that's getting in the way of what they want. And it has no point to it because they can't understand why you should have a boundary if it's going to inconvenience them. So if we spend too much time in relationships with narcissistic people and we become vulnerable to this and we're trying to make them happy, we can become very, very conditioned to feel like our normal healthy boundaries are actually some kind of selfish affront to other people, that our boundaries are just an inconvenience and something that we should just keep to ourselves if we really care about the people around us. But as I grew and learned and healed, I came to understand that boundaries are for everybody, and boundaries are there to communicate with people that care about us. People that respect us want to know what our boundaries are, and boundaries are how we let people know what we expect from them, and when they tell us what their boundaries are, that's how we know what they expect from us or what they're comfortable with. So let me give you some examples of normal, healthy boundaries. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on my channel, but I happen to be vegan. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. Okay, but I'm vegan, and every now and then when I'm with somebody and we're going to go eat somewhere or they're offering me food, I have to tell them I'm vegan because that's a boundary, a personal boundary that I've set. I don't eat certain things. And I promise I'm not one of those vegans that go around telling everybody that I'm vegan. Obviously, I haven't mentioned it once in the 2 years I've been on this channel, I think. Maybe I have, I don't know. But, if somebody's asking me where I want to go eat or asking me where we want to order food, or maybe they're trying to offer me something, sometimes I have to tell them that I'm vegan because I'm setting a boundary. I'm letting them know what I will and will not eat and why. And I have found that people are very respectful of this if I communicate this boundary in a respectful way. People want to know what my boundaries are, and they appreciate that I'm communicating with them. Another example could be maybe I'm going to watch a movie with my partner, and my partner suggests a movie that I hate, but I can tell that they kind of want to watch it, right? If I'm somebody that's confident in communicating my boundaries, I won't have a problem respectfully communicating that looks like a movie I'm probably really gonna hate. if I have a real problem communicating boundaries and I've been taught that my boundaries are just a selfish affront to other people, then I might have a really hard time expressing this honest opinion that I don't think I'm gonna like that movie. If my partner cares about me and respects me, they're going to want to know that I really, really don't want to watch that movie. They're not going to be annoyed by it. If anything, they're going to be annoyed that I didn't tell them that I didn't really want to watch that movie. Maybe a more extreme example would be, maybe I have a group of friends and they want to go hiking. They want to go on like a 5-mile hike. And I just injured my ankle, but I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to let them down. So I just don't say anything about my ankle and I just go on this hike with them and I further injure myself. And, you know, if my friends care about me and respect me, they're probably going to be a little annoyed that I didn't say anything about my injured ankle. And I just sat and went on this hike with them as if they would have wanted me to further injure myself. And another simple example would be if somebody asks for your help with something, but you truly are really busy, overwhelmed, or very tired, but you just don't say anything because you don't want them to think badly of you and you don't want to be selfish. So you don't communicate this boundary and you just overstretch yourself anyway. I had a coworker who was a very hard worker, a very good-natured person. I really liked this person a lot. I still do. And I remember though seeing this person taking on more work than they needed to, really kind of volunteering in a way to take on much more work than was expected. And the management at this job that I worked at was more than happy to just pile more and more work onto this coworker who seemed fine with it. And I remember watching her one day. I can't remember, this was a long time ago. I can't remember if she said something, but I remember I realized she was kind of grumbling to herself and making these faces, and I realized that she actually really resented all this work that she had to do. And I remember thinking like, oh, why don't you say something then? Why do you keep agreeing to do all this stuff? And that really made an impression on me of somebody that just was not able to communicate boundaries that probably would have been respected if they'd been communicated. And here this person was actually becoming bitter and resentful for the work that she just wasn't able to communicate a boundary with. Now, narcissists want to destroy your boundaries. They don't want to hear about your boundaries. And if you try to communicate boundaries to them, they will do everything they can to ignore them. And narcissists won't just ignore your boundaries. They will push you far further than any normal person might push you. So while your friends might ask you, do you want to go on a hike with us? And you don't tell them that you've injured your ankle. You know, a narcissist might demand that you go on a 20-mile hike with them after they know that you've injured their ankle. So they're demanding much more from you than your friends would have ever demanded. I mean, unless your friends are into 20-mile hikes, but you know what I mean? A narcissist is going to expect much more from you than a normal person would have ever expected. And they're going to look at your boundaries as an insult, as an inconvenience. They're going to completely disrespect your boundaries. Like, you don't usually need to set boundaries with friends that respect you against things like name calling, insulting, being overly critical, yelling at you, fighting with you for 3 hours over nothing. You don't usually need to set boundaries for these types of things when you're dealing with people that respect you. And that's why, at least for me, that's why I was kind of confused as to what boundaries actually were and how to set them in a normal world. I mean, narcissists will keep you awake when they know that you need sleep. They will take up all your time and energy when they know that there are things you'd rather be doing. They'll demand obedience from you. I mean, they will obliterate your boundaries and then they'll push you so far that you'll forget where your boundaries ever even were. Maybe your normal boundaries would have been something like you go to bed at 10 p.m. That's when you want to go to bed. 10 p.m. is a good time for you to go to bed, but the narcissist has pushed you so far that you get to the point where you're just begging and pleading and hoping that you get to bed by midnight. You'd be so happy if you could just get to bed by midnight. And you can get so used to this kind of treatment that after a while you forget that you ever wanted to go to bed at 10 p.m. because your boundaries have just been so completely obliterated. And I think this is a simple example of something that can apply to many, many things. That's why after spending years with a narcissistic person, you can completely lose touch with what you want, what your boundaries are, what you're comfortable with, because you're so used to just wishing and hoping for the bare minimum that you don't even know what you're comfortable with. Now, I mentioned earlier that narcissists see boundaries as a kind of attack or as robbery or as an insult. So to go into a little more detail with that, a boundary to a narcissist is like you're taking away something that rightfully belongs to them. Narcissists see people as objects only good for their use. You're only good to them is what they can use you for. So in their mind, you owe them everything you have, your time, your energy, and your boundaries are not for you to decide. Your boundaries are for them to decide. They will decide when it's time for you to go to bed. They will decide what you can eat or what you're comfortable eating. They will decide how long of a hike you're going to go on if they need somebody to hike with them. In a narcissist's mind, you don't exist for yourself. You don't exist for your own good, for your life. You exist for the narcissist. The only reason you're even here, the only reason that you exist is for the narcissist's own good. Your whole identity in a narcissist's mind is as a character in a story about them. You don't exist in any other way. So when you try to assert boundaries that don't have anything to do with them and only inconvenience them and mess up their narrative, that's something that they cannot even begin to understand the purpose of. It's like trying to explain to a 5-year-old why they can't have a big bowl of ice cream right before they go to bed. I mean, they just are not going to understand it. You have to just assert that boundary. Now, of course, this is a huge double standard for narcissists. Narcissists are fine setting boundaries. I actually remember a very narcissistic person that I was close with whom I actually admired for this person's ability to set boundaries. I thought, wow, that person just tells people no, just has no problem just saying, nope, I don't want to do that. And I actually kind of admired that. Now, in hindsight, I think it's kind of funny that this person had no respect for other people's boundaries, like mine, but I didn't think about that at the time. I just somewhere in the back of my mind knew, maybe way in the back of my mind, knew that I wasn't comfortable asserting boundaries the way that this person was. And I was maybe even a little jealous, like, how do they do that? How do they just say no when they don't want to do something? And it didn't occur to me, well, you're not comfortable saying no because you're talking to this person, because they're not accepting the no that they have no problem giving to others. And narcissists have this double standard because they only see the world from their own perspective. This seems totally natural to them. It doesn't seem hypocritical to them because they see the world from their perspective. And they don't stop to think about how the world exists from everybody's perspective the same way it does from theirs. Their perspective is the only one that exists, and the world only exists from their perspective. So it's only natural that it's okay for them to set boundaries, but that it's not okay for you to set boundaries because you're different from them. They're the center of the universe. They're the center of existence. They're the main character in this story or this movie about them, and you're a supporting character, right? You're over there, outside the center of reality. You're a satellite. They're the only thing that really matters. And that's why they have no problem setting boundaries, and that's why they feel entitled to get upset when you try to set boundaries. And they can get really, really good at this. They can make you feel ashamed of yourself for trying to assert normal, healthy boundaries, not just with them, but with anybody. This can carry on into all of your other relationships where you are convinced that trying to say no to someone or trying to tell someone that you're not comfortable with something is you being a horrible, selfish person. And this is something we learn because when we spend too much time with a narcissist, we learn that it truly is preferable to violate our own boundaries most of the time, depending on what the boundaries are, but it really is preferable to just violate and ignore our own boundaries than to deal with the repercussions of offending a narcissist with our boundaries. So like if I want to go to bed at 10 p.m. and that is what I'm comfortable with and that's my boundary, maybe I'm with a narcissist that really gets so angry that I won't stay up and watch TV with him or her until midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, that even though I'm losing sleep and even though that's making me miserable, I would be more miserable dealing with this person's temper tantrums if I don't just stay up and watch TV with them. So it's really kind of sad how narcissists can condition you to really ignore the things that make your life feel comfortable for you. And they can convince you that the things that make your life comfortable for you are selfish and you ought to be ashamed of yourself for wanting to go to bed at 10 p.m., for just leaving them alone watching TV all by themselves. Isn't that awful of you that you want to go to bed early like a little old lady? Okay, now how do we set boundaries with narcissists? With healthy, respectful people, really all we have to do is just tell them. Just tell somebody, oh, I really prefer going to bed at 10 p.m. Or, oh, I'm vegan, I don't eat that kind of stuff. Or, oh, I'd love to go on a hike, but I twisted my ankle a couple days ago and I think I ought to let it heal. You know, all you have to do is just say these things and a respectful person will just accept it and it won't be a big deal. But with a narcissist, they can get to the point where they're yelling and screaming at you and calling you names and going way past beyond anything that a healthy, respectful person would do. And they will still ignore your attempts to set any boundaries. I think in order to understand how to set boundaries with narcissists, there's some really big rocks of truth that you really need to accept. And one of the biggest things that you really have to accept is that you cannot control the narcissist's behavior. There is no boundary you can set, in no way that you can set it, that will change the way the narcissist behaves. If the narcissist will not accept that you want to go to bed at 10 p.m., you cannot make them be happy with that. You cannot force them to stop coming into your room and trying to wake you up. You cannot control their behavior. And I know in situations where maybe a narcissist has been really mean to me, like calling me names, saying I'm stupid or harassing me over something, I will feel like I'm setting a boundary by standing there arguing with them. But when you're standing there arguing with them, that is not setting a boundary. That's actually enabling them and putting validity into what they're doing or saying, because you're standing there accepting it. Even if you're sitting there arguing with them, when you argue, you are presenting the possibility that this is something that they can get away with. I personally believe, based on my past experiences, that the only effective way to set a boundary with a narcissist is just to do what you want within your boundaries. And sometimes that means walking out of the room. You know, if your boundary is, I won't sit here and let somebody call me names and tell me I'm stupid, the answer is not to sit and argue with them and try to convince them of your boundaries and try to convince them to stop calling you names. They are going to call you names if that's what they do. That is what they are going to do, and you cannot stop them from doing that. But you can get up and walk out of the room. And there are many times in my past that I look back on that I wish that I would have done that. Or I can see in hindsight that that is what I should have done. Another rock of truth that you have to accept is that the narcissist is going to be upset with you when you set boundaries with them. They are not going to like it. And you have to accept that. You have to be okay with this person being upset with you because you're not doing every little thing that they want you to do. These unhealthy codependent relationships that we have with narcissists can leave us feeling like we have to make them happy. We can't just leave them upset. And if they're angry with us, it's the end of the world. So this is a really big hurdle that we have to get over. We have to accept that this person's going to be upset with us and that is better than allowing our own boundaries to be trampled on and to violate our own boundaries and not to protect our own space. One of the ultimate boundaries that you can set with a narcissistic person is to go no contact with them. And this does not require their agreement, and this is going to make them really upset. And this is not something that's going to change their behavior at all. This is a situation in which you're taking control, you're setting a boundary, and you are just not answering the phone, not responding to that text message, not opening the door. This is how you set a boundary with somebody that refuses to respect your boundaries. You assert your boundaries and you follow your own boundaries without that person agreeing with you or liking what you're doing. That's the biggest difference between setting a boundary with a healthy person and setting a boundary with a narcissist. A healthy person will accept what you're saying and respect your boundaries. A narcissist will be upset and they will try to break your boundaries. They will look at your boundaries as a challenge because narcissists are always in a contest in their head. So when you try to set a boundary with them, it immediately becomes like a power play, like a contest that they have to win. So now they want to violate your boundaries even more than they wanted to before. So I asked in the very beginning of this video, can setting boundaries with a narcissist make the relationship more tolerable? This really depends on the narcissist, and it depends on what your boundaries are, and it depends on your mindset. Boundaries are going to make the narcissist upset. So if the narcissist is upset, is that going to make the relationship less tolerable for you? Boundaries are not going to change the narcissist's behavior. The narcissist is going to do and say whatever they want to say, and they're going to continue doing and saying whatever they do or say. But boundaries can bring a little bit more peace into your life and maybe make it easier for you to function in this relationship, depending on what kind of a relationship it is. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist that's yelling and screaming at you and abusing you and making your life a living hell, then no, in my opinion, boundaries are actually probably going to make things worse in a relationship like that, because now they see you trying to assert boundaries. So now they have more things to overcome and more things to become even more aggressive over. But if this is like maybe a sibling or somebody that you don't live with, and you just set emotional boundaries with yourself, you say no when you want to say no, and you let them be angry and you don't let that bother you, then yeah, setting boundaries might make a relationship like that more tolerable for you. Probably a lot more irritating for the narcissist, but what can you do? I mean, boundaries are basically your autonomy expressed. And how can expressed autonomy improve mutually a relationship with somebody that can't even recognize your autonomy or sees your autonomy as a threat? Boundaries are a narcissist's kryptonite because they are exactly the opposite of what the narcissist expects and wants and feels entitled to receive from other people. But boundaries will actually improve a relationship with a respectful, healthy person, because somebody that respects you and cares about you wants to know your boundaries because they want to be able to treat you in a way that makes you comfortable. So if you're able to communicate your boundaries with someone and then you find that they respect your boundaries and remember your boundaries and actually welcome your boundaries, you're going to develop more trust in that person, and that person is going to appreciate that you're communicating with them, and they're going to get to know you better. So boundaries actually improve healthy relationships, but setting boundaries with a narcissist is only going to widen the gap between you and this person that you're never really going to reach. Boundaries are a way to protect yourself from somebody that only sees you as an object that they can use. And when you have to protect yourself from somebody that you're in a relationship with, the best, most effective boundary that you can set with somebody like that is just to not have them around in the first place. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.